We did nothing wrong!
Yeah, we did. We were supposed to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves.
So we've been getting recently some comments related to the subject matter we're going to talk about this evening. And for those of you who would correct the King James Version translators by looking up an isolated word in the Strong's Concordance or the BDB or the Analytical Hebrew Lexicon by Davidson or the Analytical Greek Lexicon by Piersbacher, these are excellent tools. However, it's not enough, folks. And I've had brother and sister time after time over the course of, not just in the comments recently, but over the course of the years in my instruction, say to me, Brother Margus, I looked up the Greek word akuo or luo or anthropos or etc. in the Strong's Concordance. I looked it up in the English, followed the numerical equivalent in the Hebrew or in the Greek, and the King James Version translators did not translate that word in the precise meaning that's in the Greek in the Strong's Concordance. Folks, it's not enough to look up an isolated word in the Hebrew or in the Greek and correct the King James Version translators. They shouldn't be corrected at all anyway, because some of these guys could speak, read, and write 10 different Eastern dialects and Eastern languages. On top of that, some Indo-European languages and dialects. We actually have to learn the language, folks, before we can translate. Anybody, even a third grader, can go to a Strong's Concordance and look up the English word, follow the number, corresponding number to the Hebrew word or the Greek word, and come up with a generic meaning. Anybody can do that. That doesn't make us a scholar, folks. No disrespect intended. Plus, number one, there's such a thing called syntax. Syntax is basically how a word in a sentence or a statement relates to the other words in a sentence or a statement. There's also such a thing called morphology, the study of forms. Basically, say the conjugation of a Greek verb, akuo, or luo, or blepo, or gnosko, or the conjugation of a Hebrew verb, katav, natan, halak. So, along with morphology, you also have the declination or the inflecting of Hebrew nouns, Greek nouns. You know, it's not enough to look up the word in its isolated form. It's finding out the form and how it's being used in the sentence. There's also such things called idiomatic expressions, such as in 2 Samuel chapter 3, when Abner got mad at Ishbosheth and said to him, "Am I a dog's head?" So we have to look into the cultural and literary context and background in order to figure out what the idiomatic expressions mean. Another example is in Matthew 19, when Jesus said it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter into heaven. What is the eye of a needle? Well, if we go over to Israel, there's certain places that are configured much like the eye of a needle was. It was a narrow passageway which a camel had a hard time passing through. But we can't understand what's being said in the figurative sense unless we follow the proper cultural and literary backdrop. And number 4, lo and behold, there is, imagine that, the thing called context. And context, as my good friend Brother Dave said, is king. folks, if we don't understand the overarching context of the statement, of the chapter, of the book, and we don't understand what idiomatic expressions are, we don't know the forms of the noun, the adjective, the verb, or the part of speech in Hebrew or in Greek, and we don't understand what syntax is, we have no business correcting the King James Version translators based on looking up an isolated word. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like a young man trying to grow a skimpy mustache. What does he look like? He looks like a young man trying to grow a skimpy mustache. Anyway, just to provide somewhat of an analogy. But folks, even if we are learned folks in this particular field, in the biblical languages, and we could translate, and we felt like we could correct the King James Version translators, then come and see us sometime, comment on it, and demonstrate that you're able to translate, and then we'll show you why the King James Version translators translated the way that they translated. And have a blessed day.